I'm G Scoley and I'm one of the young stock researchers here at FB Hillsborough, and I've been working on mostly on the project with Aaron, the Opti House project that some of you have been involved in. But today I'm going to begin by talking about the first few hours of life and how we can make sure that calves get the best start in life. And we do that through good colostrum management, which is essential for calf health, survival and future productivity. So why is colostrum so important? Colostrum is the essential first feed for the newborn calf, and it contains around 60% more fat and 437% more protein than milk. So it's a really good source of energy for the calf. As well as this, colostrum contains maternal antibodies, which help protect from disease challenges in early life. And research has also indicated that it has a positive impact on future health and performance. But if we want to maximise the benefits, we need to make sure that it's handled and administered properly. And although that we have seen improvements in that area, and you're probably fed up of hearing about colostrum, we still have a bit of a way to go, so that's why we're going back over it again. So calves, whenever they're born, have an immature immune system as they don't receive antibodies from the dam via the placenta, and as a result, they are reliant on passive immunity, which they receive through colostrum. So if calves don't receive an adequate amount of good quality colostrum, they're at risk of suffering from failure of passive transfer, or FPT. And FPT is indicated when calves show a serum blood level that's less than 10 mg per mil of IgGs. And we know that failure of passive transfer has a huge impact on calf survivability, as 71% of calves post-mortem by VSD in 2016 exhibited FPT. In the colostrum study, there were 3,236 calves born, and 34% of those calves had serum IgG levels that were less than 10 mg per mil, so they had suffered from failure of passive transfer. And the calves that had FPT were 3 times more likely to die before the age of 3 months, whereas the calves that received quality colostrum were 38% less likely to have FPT, so it has a huge impact on the calves. In terms of that's the on-farm study, we can also see that FPT had a huge impact on mortality. In terms of overall mortality throughout the study, in calves under 1 month of age, mortality was 3.7%, and under 12 months of age, it was 7.1%. But if you look at the table, we can see that calves that suffered from FPT had 6% mortality, as opposed to those that had successful passive transfer, and they were 3.2%, so double the amount of calves died if they had FPT. We can also see an increase in pneumonia and illness in calves that had suffered from FPT. So how do we avoid FPT? Well, we remember the 4 Qs, and that's quality, quantity, quickly, and quietly. I'll go into more detail on the first 3 Qs. The last Q is possibly less well known, but it's really important that in the period after calving, we keep the calf as stress-free as possible, as stress can have a huge impact on the calf's ability to absorb the maternal antibodies. So we want it quiet, calm, and at all times we have to remember hygiene, because that can have a really huge impact on colostrum quality. So quality, the goal is to feed colostrum that contains an IgG level of over 50 mg per mil. And what we really want to avoid is any colostrum containing under 20 grams per litre, under 20 grams per litre of IgG. As part of the on-farm colostrum project, 1,239 colostrum samples were taken, and 67% of those samples exhibited low levels of IgG, and 28% were under the 20 grams per litre level. So it's a real risk on farm for FPT and an impact on calf survivability. But not all colostrum is equal, and we also found a huge variation in the on-farm samples in terms of nutritional composition, and also a very high level of bacterial contamination. And ideally, if we're feeding colostrum, we want it to be under 100,000 CFU for the TVC count. So this really highlights the importance of testing colostrum quality routinely, and you can do this with devices that cost as little as £20 that Laura will be showing you a bit later on, such as the colostrometer the bricks refractometer, and we also have a digital refractometer, which is a bit more expensive. But the one on either side, they cost around £20. And we found that in the Opti House project, where 66 dairy farms were surveyed, only 13.6% of farms were routinely testing the colostrum. So there's massive room for improvement there. So what influences colostrum quality? Well, there are a number of variables, this including length of dry cow period, dry cow nutrition, time of collection, breed, and parity. There's also a bit of a myth around heifer colostrum from first-time calvers. A lot of people think that it's not good enough quality to feed to their calves, but in reality, on the on-farm study, we found that 44% of the colostrum from first-time calvers had an IgG level of over 50 grams per litre, which makes it quality colostrum. So if you're not testing it, you don't know, you could be throwing away colostrum that is useful for the calf. So you really, really need to start developing a protocol which involves testing the colostrum to ensure that you're giving high quality feed to the calf. In terms of management, there's a number of variables that can affect the quality of colostrum. In a study here at AFBI, we examined the effect of vaccination of the dam on colostrum quality. So if the dams are vaccinated, they produce antibodies against specific pathogens, and these can be passed to the calf via the colostrum. So we examined a group of non-vaccinated and vaccinated cows for E. coli, rotavirus, and coronavirus. And you can see on the far side of this table at the top, you had a massive increase in percentage of antibodies present in cows that were vaccinated. But you really have to follow the manufacturer's guidelines, because if you're we examined how the impact of not following the guidelines, and if you're vaccinating within 3 weeks of calving, there's a huge reduction in the antibodies present. It's really important to follow the guidelines, or it's not going to work properly, and it's going to impact your quality of colostrum. So if you are vaccinating and your quality still isn't there, and you're wondering why, you need to check your management protocols during the dry cow period. Another issue in the dry cow period is the length of dry cow period. So a dry cow period of less than 8 weeks when compared to one over 16 weeks, there was a massive decrease in colostrum IgG in those cows that had a dry cow period of less than 8 weeks. So really important to look at your dry cow management practices and develop a protocol. Another part that can affect colostrum quality is the handling and storage. So once we get the colostrum, what do we do with it? Bacterial contamination can double every 20 minutes in warm colostrum. So we examined how storage we had a study examining how storage temperature can affect bacterial load. And as you can see from the graph, if you're storing the colostrum at 4 degrees in a fridge, it remains under the 100,000 limit of TBC. Whereas if it's stored at 12 degrees, we're getting a massive increase in bacterial load, and that can affect the quality, and you don't want to be passing the bacterial load to the calf. So as a rule of thumb, if you're feeding colostrum, you need to feed it fresh within 1 hour of collection. If you're not feeding it fresh within 1 hour, it needs to be stored in a clean, covered container in the fridge, and it can be stored there for up to 24 hours and then used. And if you're not feeding it within the 24 hours, it can be stored in flat bags, 2 litre bags, mark up the dam ID, the quality of the colostrum, when it was collected, and store it flat in the freezer, and it can be stored in the freezer for up to 1 year at -20. So you'll always have a stock of good quality colostrum, and you know where it's come from. So on to quantity and how much should be fed. Ideally, calves need between 150 to 180 grams of IgG in the first feed. So if colostrum quality is at the level of 50 grams per litre, a 3 litre feed should provide adequate passive transfer. But if your quality is down at 20 grams per litre, you need to feed the calf 7.5 litres of colostrum just to get the 150 grams of IgG, and that's not possible or advisable. Ideally, you need to be feeding between 3 to 4 litres, maximum 4 litres, of good quality colostrum to be able to give the calf the immunity that it needs. The survey is part of the Colostrum project. 44% of farms were feeding less than the 3 litre of colostrum in the first feed. We've seen a bit of improvement there, as in the recent Opti House project, 19.7% of the 66 farms were feeding less than 3 litres. So we're definitely getting there in terms of we know we need to feed 3 to 4 litres. And this really decreases the risk. If you're feeding that amount of good quality colostrum, it really decreases the risk for FPT. In a study done by Amanda Dunn as part of her PhD, she examined feeding 5% or 10% of birth weight in colostrum immediately after birth. And as you can see from the graph, we know that the blood IgG level we need is to indicate successful passive transfer is 10 mg per mil. And in 5% column, it's just 12.3 when you're feeding 5% of birth weight. So it's just marginally over the value for successful passive transfer. Whereas if you're feeding 10% of body weight, it's doubled what we need. So it really gives the calves good protection. And you can see that it also had a positive impact on scar index, with less scarring in the calves that have received the 10% body weight in colostrum. We checked the data a bit further and we modelled it. And providing calves with 10% of their birth weight in colostrum up to the 4 litres in the first feed would mean that it would be possible to achieve successful passive transfer in 86% of calves, which is a real benefit to the herd. But it's really important. We don't really ideally want to go over the 4 litres. Up to 4, the abomasum is small. You don't want to overload the calf. If you want to feed more than the 4 litres, split the feeds out. So feed them 3 to 4 litres in the first feed. Then a few hours later, you can give them a top-up feed. So timing is critical for delivery of the colostrum, and you want to give adequate quality colostrum as soon as possible after birth, preferably within the first 2 hours of birth, but definitely within the first 6 hours of birth. And this is for a number of reasons. First one being IgG concentration depletes rapidly as the colostrum is held in the udder. It becomes more dilute. So you want to get it out of the cow and into the calf as soon as possible. Secondly, the calf's ability to absorb IgG into the bloodstream diminishes over time, and it's completely blocked after the first 24 hours. So any colostrum fed after the first 24 hours gives localized immunity in the gut, but it won't get into the bloodstream. And you can also see from the bar chart at the top, colostrum IgG concentration depletes rapidly between first and third milkings. There's a 50% reduction in IgG level, so it really does diminish quickly, which is why you want to get the 3 to 4 litres into the calf as soon as possible after birth. So why do we want to do this? These results are pulled together from several studies, and they were from calves receiving either low, medium or high quality colostrum. And you can see that in calves that were offered a high level of colostrum, there was an increase in weight, there was improved live weight gain, there was a reduced age at slaughter, a decrease in veterinary costs by about $10 per calf. There was a 1,000 litre increase in first lactation yield and a 1,500 litre increase in second lactation yield. So it really has positive impacts on your calf. And with all of these improvements, that also reduces rearing costs, as if the calf isn't growing as it should be and reaching its targets to calve at 24 months, it can cost you an extra £2.87 per day to rear that calf. So getting it right can really make a difference to your herd and to your pocket. So in sum, a colostrum checklist, you want to set up a protocol for a birth management plan and a colostrum management plan. Have it in your calving shed. Make sure anybody that is calving, looking after the calves, knows that protocol inside and out, and make sure that it's easy to follow. You feed 8.5 to 10% of birth weight in colostrum up to a maximum of 4 litres within the first 6 hours of life. Remember to check the quality, conduct the routine testing of the colostrum. Don't feed any colostrum from young days positive cows. Try to avoid the use of pooled colostrum, as that introduces a lot of variation into the quality. Check the immune status and see if you are achieving successful passive transfer. Work alongside your vet. They can do ZST tests very simply, very quickly, to see if passive transfer has occurred in your herd. Maintain accurate calf performance and health records and review them. There's no point of recording them if you're not going to look at them and see where improvements can be made. And implement the strict biosecurity and hygiene protocols to make sure the calving area is as clean as possible and as stress-free as possible for the calf. Because investing time in doing all of these things can really maximise the benefits to your herd.
Okay, thank you, Julie.